Now, again, I don't think most young people, I don't think most people really, black or white, have a real sense of just how segregated the armed forces had been
Well,
in the early 1900s, and what it was from 1919 to 1932 or something, that blacks weren't even
37.
allowed. 37?
I think it was 37.
Blacks weren't even allowed to
Enlisted in the
enlist.
Navy. They were taking Filipinos at that point in time.
Why?
Well,
Why that total ban?
I have no idea. And they don't have any idea, and they can't give you a good reason for it. But at the same time, they were getting enough Filipino recruits to fill up those billets. And so they fill them with Filipinos. And then in 1937, apparently about that time, I guess people started thinking about the war and more ships and those kinds of things. And we would have less Filipinos, our chance of getting Filipinos was slimmer. So they decided to recruit blacks again. And my first cousin, who lived in the same, in fact, he lived with us for a while. I don't know how where he stayed, but stayed with us for about 2 years until his mother remarried. And then they took home and he moved back with them. But at age 17, which was about, he would have been 17, about 39, I guess, he joined the Navy and became a steward's mate and stayed in till he retired, about 25 or 30 years. And I just refused to do that. I refused to go in and cook.
But that was what most of the black men who were allowed to enlist in the Navy were at that stage, as I understand it.
All of the black men who were allowed to enlist in the Navy became stewards. The general service ratings were not open to black men until 1942. And the first one to go into the Navy after World War II, or sometime after World War II, went in on about June 2nd or 3rd, 4th, or something like that, about that time frame. And he went to Great Lakes.
Now, it was after Pearl Harbor was the thing, obviously, that made the Navy say, you know, we have to start looking around because we can't do this without more bodies, literally more bodies. And that was December 7th, 1941.
That's right.
Was that the point at which you started thinking, oh, I'm going to be drafted? And
yeah, when Pearl Harbor came, then I was sure that I would be drafted, but not by the Navy, by the Army. That's what I was afraid of. I did not want to go in the Army. My father had fought in the Army, and he didn't like it. He did about 3 or 4 years in there, but I didn't want to go either.
Excuse me for asking, but why was the Army any worse than the Navy at that point?
Well, most people told me that the Navy generally slept in clean beds ashore. I mean, at sea. The Army slept in mud holes and tents and that kind of bit. And I just felt it would be a better life in the Navy.
Not that the racial restrictions were less in the Navy.
Never thought of that. I knew that the Army was segregated because the Army advertised this segregation. Join the Army and go to that fort out west someplace, I forget the name.
What do you mean they advertised their segregation?
That's one of their recruiting aids.
Was to encourage...
Join the Army, and you could be in a completely black camp.
And that was supposed to be appealing?
It was appealing to guys.
To be in a completely black camp?
Yes.
Why?
I don't know. I said it didn't appeal to me.
So you saw more potential in the Navy.
I saw more potential, primarily because of this tour down at Hampton, which I thought I'd be as smart as anybody else who came in there, and I'd be selected for that school, and I'd go down to Hampton for 4 months and learn to be a motor machinist, to be honest with you. I wanted to be a motor machinist.
So you enlisted,
Mm-hmm.
and then what happened?
Well, I enlisted. There's a picture of my company up there, and you can see that not very many faces up there that aren't black. In fact, there are no faces up there that aren't black that were people in that company. It's all black. At the end of the period, 16 weeks, I guess I ended up with pneumonia and had to stay in the hospital for 2 weeks, and so that made me miss the class. But on 1 January of 1943, I was on a train going to Hampton. Got into Hampton, and I just loved every minute of it.